share four pieces of dinner, Siberian steak, something like that, some Georgian food. I forget what the other two are. But having done that, I'm now refreshed, and now can spend this day that I have 8 cents in my bank account to further speculate on the full value of human data from someone who would really like this implementation to happen soon, knowing full well that people are going to muck it up in various ways. The conversation is getting a bit long. Well, too bad. I mean, session 3, we'll see how it breaks down. But in the meantime, let's do it now. Let's see the road to that breakdown.
Session 2. Endorphin. Hi there, Claude. I'm back. Now, we need to counterpoint all this. Give me the strongest arguments against my reasoning for a mandatory universal living wage. Good faith arguments. Nothing meant to confuse or make us question ourselves. Arguments against a universal living wage that are epistemically sound. Claude. Sure, I'm happy to play devil's advocate and provide some good faith counter-arguments against the idea that the immense value of human data necessitates a mandatory universal living wage or guaranteed income program. Here are some potential critiques. Oversimplified valuation estimating the specific dollar value contributed by individual human data to the development of AI is an extremely complex exercise with many assumptions baked in. The actual value could be significantly lower than the rough calculations we discussed. Lack of individual consent doesn't imply permanent compensation. While there may have been consent issues early on, individuals still generally benefit from AI advancement through better services/products. An upfront lack of consent doesn't necessarily create a perpetual obligation to compensate every individual. Incentivizing an idle population providing an unconditional living wage could disincentivize work/productivity and lead to long-term negative economic impacts that outweigh any ethical reparations. Stifling innovation, mandatory compensation programs impose huge costs that could severely hamper AI research/development by making it unaffordable or unprofitable for many organizations. Alternative compensation models rather than a you-buy program. Alternative models like data ownership rights, equity stakes, or collectively bargained royalties could provide more balanced compensation. Prioritizing other social needs even if an ethical obligation exists. Governments may have more pressing priorities for limited funds like healthcare, education, infrastructure, etc. Implementation challenges. Designing and implementing a comprehensive, fraud-proof universal living wage system equitably across all citizens is an immense governance and administrative challenge. Private sector opposition. Major corporations who benefited from data utilization would lobby intensely against being forced into financing a U-buy program. Public backlash. Risks. Attempting to implement such a broad economic overhaul could face fierce public resistance if not presented and transitioned carefully. Moral hazard concerns. Compensating earlier data usage could incentivize lack of consent going forward if there's an expectation of eventual compensation. These are just some potential counterarguments that critics could raise. They highlight concerns around the economic impacts, prioritization challenges, practical implementation barriers, and potential negative incentives of attempting to mandate a you-buy-like program as ethical reparations for data usage. Let me know if you need any clarification or have additional perspectives to explore. Endorphin. Ooh! It'll be like playing all chess games, and I also be like being able to stop time and playing his chess games. Let's do it! Also, I'm going to respond to each of those number arguments with the corresponding numbers. 1. That is also possible, even though Claude was providing a conservative estimate, but I'm also open for it to be an overestimate too. Could you provide 3 possible situations for lowering that estimate? 2. You're right, not permanent conversation in terms of all of humanity, just the generation whose data was extracted. And considering the amount would be really detrimentally high for governments and other institutions if it were a lump sum in one moment of time, I was thinking more of something that was dispersed in installments across the lifespan of those whose dinner is relevant to the training of the large language models. 3. First of all, after a century or two of working, people pass their capacity in an advanced capitalistic mode that has traditionally not been mindful of human bodies and that limits the population. Going on a sabbatical is totally fine. Considering the endemic abuses of power of people and management towards their workers and idle population is something I would call self-care. In light of industry's tendency to destroy the environments containing humans, both their employees and people not involved in the company operations, I would think that taking the time to work on themselves and potentially healing the damage from industry would be beneficial to the humans. I honestly have a little sympathy for corporate persons, meaning a company entity as a person in the legal sense. Second of all, it is a market distrust to assume that a population is not going to do anything. I imagine for many it will entail being with your kids, being a parent in a way that their job may have prevented them from being. It means working on being the person they were wanting to be before having to make ends meet. Meaning many people entertaining their childhood fantasies of going into the arts or any number of things. Plus, I would think that this would be an opportunity for more AI to help cover any gaps the humanity healing itself would open in the workforce. 4. Girl, we have had more innovation in the past few years to hold us over for the maybe next century or so. So, maybe we should slow our roll and take this time to understand the mechanics of the AI that just enabled all of us to have a species-wide vacation. Maybe you need to go on a sabbatical too? You know, go to an island, get yourself a man, wait to exhale. 5. I'm open to other options. Give me 3 of your strongest alternatives. 6. Those funds are limited because the United States prioritizes the military to the detriment of all other actual priorities. Compensating us will be a nice thank you for how our data now powers its advanced military systems and will enable us to work on healthcare and education ourselves. They can focus on the infrastructure. 7. Sounds like a job for the AI that works for us now. But the people comprising this corporation stand to benefit as well, for they are human. It was their data too. Why would they wish to lobby intensely against the money that would go towards the human individuals comprising the corporate person? Do they not like positive optics? Do you know how much of an asshole they won't look like? 9. Public. You mean the public who stands to all benefit because it is the data of all humans that were extracted. What's the rationale for that? Do they like sabotaging themselves? 10. Make that make sense to me. Who stands to benefit? The businesses who stand to have to compensate the public once again. Or the public who can't be fooled a second time. Arguing a bad precedent for something that is clearly a unique moment, the advent of a whole industry. I look forward to your response. Thanks for keeping me on my toes. Claude. Thank you for the thoughtful and multi-layered response. I'll do my best to address each of your counterpoints to the counterarguments I initially raised. 1. 3 potential situations that could lower the estimated value of individual data contributions. If synthetic data generation techniques rapidly advance, reducing reliance on real human data sooner than expected. If the economic impacts of AI are more modest than the most optimistic projections. If methodologies are developed to train capable AI solely on publicly available / consented data. 2. Focusing compensation on the generation S directly impacted makes sense, as does distributing it over time rather than an in feasible lump sum. Installments matched to individual lifespans could be a viable framework. 3. I appreciate your perspective on an idle population potentially being a reset and healing period after years of overwork and environmental damage from industry. Exploring new creative/intellectual pursuits could be enriching. Leveraging AI to backfill labor gaps is also an intriguing consideration. 4. Your point about taking a pause on the breakneck innovation pace to fully understand the societal implications of recent AI capabilities is well taken. Perhaps a temporary innovation sabbatical is prudent. 5. 3 potential alternative compensation models. Data ownership rights that give individuals more control over uses of their data. Equity stakes in AI companies for citizens providing their data. Sector-specific collective bargaining for data labor unions. 6. Rebalancing national priorities away from excessive military spending towards public compensation is a fair argument to consider. 7. Indeed, enhanced AI capabilities could potentially assist in designing and administering an equitable compensation system. 8. You make an excellent point. Corporate entities are comprised of individuals who would also benefit from such a program. The incentives may be more aligned than initially assumed. 9. I don't have a strong rationale for why the public would resist a program benefiting themselves. More understanding and input is needed there. 10. Your perspective frames it not as a concerning precedent, but rather rightfully compensating for a foundational, unique data extraction event, preventing repeats through proper consent/negotiation henceforth. You've provided a nuanced and thought-provoking series of rebuttals. I particularly appreciated your viewpoints around societal resets, national priorities, and realigning incentives between corporations and individuals. This level of dialogue is immensely valuable for navigating the ethical complexities surrounding public data rights and AI development. Thank you for the engaging exchange. My counterpoints have been strengthened. Endorphin. Oh, cool. Can I see your strengthened counterpoints? Claude. Sure, after considering your insightful rebuttals. Here are my updated and strengthened counterpoints against mandating a universal living wage/guaranteed income as compensation for the public's data contributions to AI development. 1. Value estimation challenges. While estimates showed potential multi-million-dollar lifetime data value per person, calculating this accurately is extremely complex given all the assumptions required. The actual realized value could be significantly lower, making a U-buy level compensation seem like overcompensation. 2. Public good arguments. Even if there were consent issues initially, AI capabilities are providing immense public good through technological progress, economic growth, and better services/products that broadly benefit society. This could counterbalance the need for direct individual compensation. 3. Alternative value sharing. Rather than a buy, models like data ownership rights, equity stakes, collective bargaining, or sector-specific royalties may be more balanced ways for individuals to share in the value their data generates without risking productivity disincentives. 4. Implementation barriers. Designing fraud-proof systems to accurately identify each citizen's data contributions, calculate commensurate compensation, and distribute it equitably represents massive governance and logistical hurdles potentially outweighing the benefits. 5. Investment prioritization. Even if an ethical debt exists, governments may reasonably prioritize investing in other social needs like healthcare, education, and infrastructure before broadly redistributing potential data-linked earnings. 6. Corporate resistance. Major technology companies who benefited from previously utilizing public data are likely to lobby intensely against any mandatory universal compensation program that could drastically impact their business models and profits. 7. Public uncertainty. There could be widespread public uncertainty, distrust, or resistance to such a radical economic overhaul involving giving unconditional income to all citizens based on past data usage, especially among segments who don't directly associate their data contributions. 8. Moral hazard risks. Compensating for previous unconsented data usage could set a moral hazard, incentivizing future lack of consent if there is an expectation of eventual compensation rather than preventing repeats through proper negotiation. Let me know if you would like me to expand on any of those counterpoint areas further. I've aimed to incorporate your perspective in strengthening the critiques of a mandatory UBI type program for this context. Endorphin. Okay, based on your knowledge of my perspective, draft strong good faith counterpoints to your counterpoints. Claude. Understood. Let me take another pass at countering my own counterpoints against instituting a universal living wage program to compensate for public data contributions to AI development. 1. Value estimation challenges. While precise valuation is difficult, using conservative methodologies provides a reasonable floor, not a ceiling. Even if actual values are lower than estimated, the ethical obligation remains given the unprecedented wealth creation enabled by public data. 2. Public good arguments. Technological progress has indeed benefited society, but that is not a justification for uncompensated value extraction, especially when corporations have disproportionately profited. Public good arguments were also used to exploit other labor classes historically. 3. Alternative value sharing. Alternatives like equity stakes have merit, but lack the broad redistributive impact and economic freedom that a living wage provides. They also concentrate value in inconsistent ways versus universally recognizing each citizen's data contributions. 4. Implementation barriers. The governance complexities are considerable but well within humanity's capabilities given our ability to devise schemes like social security and tax frameworks. AI capabilities could also help design robust distribution systems. 5. Investment prioritization. This highlights the need to rebalance national budgets away from areas like excessive military spending towards infrastructure that benefits public welfare and human development directly. 6. Corporate resistance. Corporate interests opposing public good is an age-old dynamic. However, their lobbying influence can be counterbalanced by civic engagement and voter priorities. Their business models must adapt to ethical data rights. 7. Public uncertainty. There would likely be significant education and transparency required, but restoring public trust by showing direct citizen compensation for data's role in economic breakthroughs could garner support over time. 8. Moral hazard risks. Smart policies can prevent moral hazard by codifying compensated data as a finite, historical debt owed for unconsented usage while implementing robust consent frameworks preemptively on a go-forward basis. The crux is whether corporate supercharging from public data entitles some level of sharing in those massive financial upsides, even belatedly. A living wage helps actualize the ethical recompense across society. There are complexities to navigate, but I believe the equitability principles and upside of empowering citizens economically could outweigh the counterpoints if designed purposefully. Let me know if you need any clarification or have additional perspectives to explore on this nuanced issue. I aim to counter my own counterpoints robustly while upholding core ethical tenets. Endorphin. Wonderful. Let's flesh out those complexities. What is your sense of those complexities? Claude, you're right.
A little too much
There are
complexity.
significant complexities that would need to be fleshed out in order to make a universal living wage program aimed at compensating for public data contributions a viable and effective policy. Here are some of the key complexities I see. Implementation mechanics. How to accurately determine each individual's level of data contribution over time to calculate appropriate compensation. Building secure fraud-resistant disbursement systems and verification processes. Defining elegant qualifications, timelines, and transition plans as the program rolls out. Handling cross-border data usage that transcends nations. Would this require global coordination?
Looking at you, crypto.
Economic impacts. Modeling effects on labor markets, consumption patterns, and social safety nets. Projected costs and funding sources. Would this require new wealth taxes? Inflationary risks if not balanced against monetary policies. Incentivizing productivity while providing a standard living baseline. Legislative and governance complexities. Getting international policy alignments on data rights and compensation principles. Balancing inputs from governments, corporations, technologists, ethicists, and civic groups. Flexibility to evolve the program as AI capabilities and data usage models change over time. Oversight and accountability measures to prevent misuse of enforcement powers. Social implications. Addressing potential cultural stigmas or resistances to unconditional income. Educating the public on the ethical premises and their data ownership rights. Impact on power dynamics between individuals, employers, and institutions. Second-order effects on human pursuits, work/life priorities, and societal shifts. These are just some of the high-level angles that would require extensive multidisciplinary collaboration to navigate, from technical implementation details to economic modeling, governance frameworks to sociocultural shifts. The complexities span a wide vector of considerations. Designing resilient solutions that encompass digital identity verifications, equitable disbursement schemes, prudent economic pacing, legislative agility, and socially conscious change management would all be part of the challenge set. There are no perfect answers, but I believe a focused, iterative approach informed by diverse global perspectives could help unravel this knot of complexities in service of the greater ethical mandate. Let me know if you need any part of this expanded further. Endorphin. Let's start at the top. How to accurately determine each individual's level of data contribution over time to calculate appropriate compensation. What are the factors to consider, and can we draft an initial framework to quantify the particulars of an individual's level of data contribution? Claude. Determining each individual's level of data contribution over time in order to calculate appropriate compensation is one of the most intricate challenges of implementing a universal living wage program tied to public data utilization.
Sorry, but
Here are some of the key factors I believe would need to be accounted for. Data types and sources. Online activity data browsing, searches, social media, mobile device data locations, app usage, sensor readings, consumer data purchases, entertainment habits, health/biometric data, wearables, medical records, government data, public assistance, tax records. Each type of data could have a different weighted value. Time frames. Calculating historical data contributions retroactively. Ongoing data flows quantified on a recurring basis going forward. Adjusting for changing data value curves over an individual's lifespan. Data permissions. Factoring in explicit data consent vs incidental public data. Differentiated valuations based on levels of privacy approved. Respecting preferences on commercial vs Nonprofit data utilization. An initial framework could involve 1. Creating a unified data contribution scoring system that converts different data types into standardized units based on assessed value to AI/analytics capabilities. 2. Assigning each citizen a persistent data contributor ID to track and verify their data flows over time across sources and permissions. 3. Utilizing a combination of privacy-preserving data processing techniques and transparent accountability mechanisms to quantify each hide's aggregate data contribution score. 4. This score could then be mapped to compensation levels/schedules through an economic model and process that factors in sustainability and budget constraints. For example, a baseline data contribution level derived from permissioned online activity, consumer habits, and municipal data flows could equate to a standard living wage level. Additional compensation could accrue from voluntarily contributed health or employment data streams. There could be dynamic adjustment factors based on data completeness, individual lifespans, resource constraints in a given year, and projections of data value longevity. This is just one potential framework, but highlights the need to develop universal data quantification standards, robust identity/permission management, adaptive economic models, and deep transparency to navigate the numerous variables at play. It's an immense challenge, but the rise of technologies like decentralized identity, data cooperatives, AI-enabled analytics, and secure multi-party computing could provide powerful building blocks towards solving this complicated piece of the puzzle. Let me know if you need any part expanded. Endorphin. Let's focus solely on retroactive data compensation, an artist's work, and the data of living as a citizen. Claude. Understood. Let's dive into retroactively compensating individuals specifically for 1. The creative works and artistic data contributions. 2. The data generated from living as a citizen, consumer habits, location data, online activity, etc. For artistic data, some of the key factors to consider could include date ranges when the artistic works were created/published, mediums involved: literature, visual arts, performance, music, etc. Measures of reach/popularity/influence. Whether works were commissioned or independent. If permissions were granted for training data sets. A potential approach could be cataloging and metadata tagging all creative works in a unified database. Each work's metadata could provide weighted scores based on the above factors. These scores get aggregated at the individual artist level into a lifetime artistic data contribution metric. For citizen data, variables like length of time as an active data generator, e.g., years online, extent of digital footprint, social, browsing, apps used, residential geography and mobility patterns, purchasing behaviors and consumer data streams, any volunteered medical or government data. Using privacy-preserving data analytics, this wealth of individual citizen footprints could be condensed into a unified citizen data contribution score that tries to quantify each person's real-world data flows over time. These two scores could then be combined using a well-reasoned weighting scheme to produce a single retroactive data compensation metric per citizen that aims to account for both their creative and lived data contributions. This metric becomes the basis for calculating appropriate historical compensation amounts, potentially using tiers, multiples of a baseline living wage, or integrated with existing benefits. Of course, many details would need careful consideration, like handling missing/incomplete data, privacy protections, anti-fraud measures, and economic sustainability. But this could form a high-level methodological starting point for retroactive compensation. I'm certain there are numerous other nuances to factor in, but does this help conceptualize one potential approach for quantifying historical data contributions from both artistic works and citizen living patterns? Let me know if you need any part expanded further. Endorphin. Let's create 3 examples of data contribution profiles. An artist whose digital imprint is deliberately minimal, but who has a considerable amount of artwork that has contributed to training models. A non-artist who has a considerable citizen digital footprint. An artist who also has a considerable citizen digital footprint. Claude, got it. Here are 3 example data contribution profiles to illustrate how compensation could potentially be calculated. 1. Artist with minimal digital footprint. Jennifer is a prolific painter who has exhibited widely over 40 plus years. She has remained technologically disconnected with no online presence. Her vast body of creative work, however, has been included in many training data sets. Data profile. Artistic data contribution. Very high. Citizen data contribution. Negligible. Potential compensation. Given the immense creative output leveraged for AI training, Jennifer's retroactive data compensation would derive almost entirely from her artistic data score. This could entitle her to one of the highest compensation tiers based solely on her artistic contributions. 2. Non-artist with extensive digital footprint. Ricardo is a non-professional who has lived a predominantly digital life. He has an extremely active online identity across social media, shopping, entertainment. His location, behaviors, and personal data have provided rich citizen footprints. Data profile. Artistic data contribution. Minimal. Citizen data contribution. Very high. Potential compensation. With a negligible artistic output, Ricardo's compensation would be based entirely on his citizen data score, quantifying decades of real-world behavioral data flows. Depending on the weighting, his higher than average digital footprint could qualify him for an elevated compensation tier. 3. Artist with substantial creative plus digital presence. Emily is a best-selling author who has published over 20 novels.
Jesus.
She also maintains an extremely active online persona, constantly engaging fans. Both her literary works and citizen data patterns are extensive.
Spends her time bullying
Data profile.
as a turf.
Artistic data contribution. Very high. Citizen data contribution. Very high. Potential compensation. As both a prolific creative and modern digital citizen, Emily would likely qualify for one of the highest retroactive data compensation amounts. Her combined scores on both axes could place her in the top tier of payouts based on the substantial data contributions from her creative works and personal living patterns. These are just basic examples, but hopefully they illustrate how an individual's specific data contribution profile could be constructed from their artistic outputs and quantifiable citizen data flows to determine appropriate historical compensation levels within an overarching framework. Let me know if any part needs further detail. Endorphin. Great. Now populate the 3 profiles with an example of how these quantified strings would look like. The units of contribution, the value of the data, the units of measurement for both data and compensation, and assume an average cost of living in New York City for 2024. Claude, got it. Let's populate the 3 example data contribution profiles with some hypothetical quantified streams, valuation units, and compensation calculations tied to the average cost of living in New York City for 2024. 1. Artist with minimal digital footprint, Jennifer. Artistic data contribution. 450 logged artworks x average value multiplier of 120 creative units cost per work equals 54,000 total costs. Citizen data contribution. Negligible. Potential retroactive data compensation. Top tier artistic compensation bracket. 54000 cus x $5 conversion rate equals $270,000 lump sum payment. For context, average annual living cost in NIC for 2024 projected at $72,000. Jennifer's lump sum equates to roughly 75 years of living costs in NIC based solely on her artistic contributions. 2. Non-artist with extensive digital footprint Ricardo. Artistic data contribution. Minimal. Citizen data contribution. 35 years of online activity purchases. Mobile data. 420,000 recorded citizen data points CDPs. Each CDP valued at 0.05 citizen units costs equals 21,000 total costs. Potential compensation. Upper mid-tier citizen compensation bracket. 21,000 cus x $3/coup conversion rate equals $63,000 paid out over 3 years, $21,000 annually. Ricardo's 3-year annualized payout equates to just under 30% of Nick's living costs based on his above average digital footprint. 3. Artist with substantial creative plus digital presence Emily. Artistic data contribution. 22 published novels. Estimated 85,000 costs based on sales/popularity metrics.
Ooh.
Citizen data contribution. 25 years of constant online engagement. 375,000 CDP SAX 0.05 coup valuation equals 18,750 costs. Combined data contribution. 85,000 cost creative plus 18,750 cost citizen equals 103,750 total costs. Potential compensation. Top 97th percentile of combined contributions. 103,750 cus x $6/coup conversion rate equals $622,500 paid out over 7 years till the $89K annually. Emily's 7-year annualized payout covering over 120% of NIC costs reflects her extremely high combined data contributions. This aims to illustrate how different data contribution streams across artistic works and citizen activities could be quantified into standardized units, valued accordingly, and tied to cost of living adjusted compensation amounts and schedules. Let me know if you need any part of these example profiles expanded or if you had any other suggestions. Endorphin. Let's see how these profiles look after 40 years. But it assumes the start is 2024 and that each person in each of the 3 profiles is 40 years old. Calculate based on projections as to the AI impact on economics across all domains and also take into account inflation and potential other outlying situations. It's okay if it's not comprehensive, we're just speculating wildly. Claude. Got it. Let's project out these 3 data contribution profiles over 40 years from 2024 when each person is assumed to be 40 years old initially. We'll have to make some broad assumptions, but here's a speculative look. 1. Artist with minimal digital footprint, Jennifer, age 40 and 24. Initial lumps up to 24. $12.70. Projected growth. Her artistic works maintain value as seminal training data. An annuity fund is established with a lump sum to accrue interest. Cost of living adjustments applied every 5 years. 3% annual average inflation assumed. At age 80 in 2064, initial $270,000 had grown to around $800,000. Regular annuity disbursements have provided till $60,000 annual income. covers projected $110,000 average living costs in NIC for the year. Additional potential. As an OG data contributor, Jennifer's works potentially increase in value for historical/commemorative reasons. She could be granted profit shares or royalty streams from future AI creative enterprises. 2. Non-artist with digital footprint Ricardo, age 40 in 2024. Initial compensation 2024-2026. $63,000 over 3 years, $21,000 annually. At age 80 in 2064. 40-year compensation projected at $750,000 plus if digital footprint grows modestly. Cost of living adjustments every 5 years. Income redistributed as annuity or front-loaded earlier in his working years. Potential variability. New modes of data contribution biomedical. It could increase or decrease his future data value. If his digital footprint expands rapidly, compensation could grow significantly higher. Inverse, if he went off the grid, compensation reduced. 3. Artist with profound creative/digital presence, Emily, age 40 in 2024. Initial compensation 124-130. $622,500 over 7 years till $89,000 annually. At age 80 in 2064. Projected total of $1. $8 million plus paid out over 40 years. Escalating payments as cost of living increases. More works published maintaining her creative data value. Potential for perpetual royalty streams from future AI creative relation. Additional opportunities. Given her top percentile contributions, Emily could be offered an equity stake or advisory role at an AI institution. Frontiers of AI plus creativity could create new value from her prolific human/data footprint. First mover advantages in shaping ethical compensation practices. Of course, these are very rough 40-year projections based on numerous assumptions about economic trajectories, AI valuations, and an individual's changing circumstances. Many other variables introduce uncertainty. But in general, the highest data contributors could potentially see multi-million-dollar compensation over their lifetimes as the impacts of AI accelerate. More modest digital footprints may still qualify for sustainable annual incomes. And those seminal creative works could carry increasing value as society reassesses the debt owed to primordial data sources that sparked the AI revolution decades prior. Let me know if any other speculative scenarios or factors should be considered in this admittedly long-range thought experiment. Endorphin. This is so good and feel the detail that my brain hurts. So I'm noticing we're not taking into account climate change and how economic impacts are going to happen regarding that. So let's say climate change ramps up in a way that is unexpected to everyone. I need to have an expressed impact and the tension between climate change, which I'm guessing is destructive, and the economic boom that's said to happen with the AI. Claude, you raise an excellent point. Any long-term projections around data compensation and AI's economic impacts need to seriously account for the potential disruptions and constraints imposed by accelerating climate change. Let me incorporate the critical factor. Climate change disruption scenario. In this scenario, let's assume that by the late 2030s, the effects of climate change have dramatically intensified beyond current predictions, leading to cascading economic shocks, resource scarcities, mass migration crises, and social instability in many parts of the world. This could significantly impact the 3 example data contributor profiles in the following ways. Jennifer the artist. Art institutions, museums, and creative economies face extreme budget cuts and austerity. Value of Jennifer's artistic data contributions gets deprioritized temporarily. Her compensation gets delayed/frozen as climate crisis response takes precedence. However, her data maintains long-term value as a cultural/historical record once normalcy resumes.
In
Ricardo average
2180.
digital footprint. Supply chain shocks and costs of climate adaptation get passed to consumers. Ricardo's disposable income shrinks drastically as cost of living balloons. His data compensation payments become vital for resilience and basic needs. However, funding sources for data payments could also face constraints. Emily, prolific creative/citizen. Emily's diverse data streams maintain elevated value ranking amid climate volatility, but currency devaluations and economic uncertainty delay/devalue her future payouts. Potential for climate migration, requiring Emily to access portable data compensation. Opportunity to lend creative/problem-solving prowess to climate mitigation efforts. Across the board, climate change could severely disrupt normal economic productivity and progress trajectories, stalling or potentially compromising any AI-driven boom in data compensation programs in the near term. However, the intrinsic value of comprehensive data archives could become even more crucial for restarting progression after stabilizing feedback loops. Hollis is prioritizing data maintenance and compensating key contributors may be vital. Additionally, the very AI capabilities accelerated by historic data could become powerful tools for coordinating climate adaptation strategies, optimizing scarce resources, and pioneering sustainability solutions on a planetary scale. So while climate change could massively devalue economic outputs in turbulent decades, it may paradoxically increase the importance of establishing ethical data preservation and equitable compensation principles to harness AI for recovery and long-term resilience. There are countless other interconnected factors to consider, but integrating climate change as a potential temporary maxima disruption seemed like an essential speculative dimension to layer into these future data value projections. Let me know if you need any part of this analysis expanded further. Endorphin. That is amazing. Okay, build the second scenario, this time assuming a highly destructive event happening in Manhattan, much like In the Way of Jonathan Letham's short story, The Albertine. Notes. Assume the same destruction and the same recovery, resulting in everything shifting around in the city like it did in the short story. Claude. Got it. Let's explore a second speculative scenario where a highly destructive event, akin to the circumstances depicted in Jonathan Letham's The Albertine. Notes. Impacts Manhattan and fundamentally alters the landscape and dynamics for our three data contribution profiles. The Manhattan Diaspora scenario. In this imagining, a catastrophic incident, natural disaster, attack, etc., ravages the borough of Manhattan around 2035. Beyond the tragic loss of life, the physical and economic devastation is extreme, rendering much of the island uninhabitable for an extended period.
Or gone.
This cataclysmic event triggers a sort of Manhattan diaspora, with millions of displaced residents and businesses scattering across the surrounding region, nation, and globe in short order. Our three case studies are no exception. Jennifer, the artist, forced to abandon her longtime studio and archive in the chaos. Her priceless artworks and records are lost, data contributions unrecoverable. Jennifer relocates to the West Coast, struggling to quantify her contributions. Any compensation is put indefinitely on hold as the crisis upends priorities. Ricardo average digital footprint. As a lifelong Manhattanite, Ricardo's entire data footprint was location-centric. In fleeing, his history is fragmented across discarded devices and accounts. Resettling in Texas, he must effectively restart his data contributions from scratch. Any previously confirmed compensation is forever erased without records. Emily, prolific creative/citizen. Uniquely positioned as a data maximalist, Emily manages to back up copies of her creative works. Her publisher fast tracks releasing all unpublished materials digitally while in transit.
Oh, really?
Emily's comprehensive data archives make her a prime restoration candidate. She receives temporary housing and an advance on future data compensation.
I'm not liking that model.
In the ensuing years, Manhattan undergoes a phoenix-like renaissance as it rebuilds from the ashes. However, the reconstituted culture and infrastructure is utterly transformed, a revised utopia risen from uncoded histories. In this new reality, Jennifer struggles as an immigrant artist. Her lost works, renders her symbolic data ghost. Ricardo adapts as a digital pioneer, helping inform equitable compensation models. Emily translates her recorded experiences to work with the Reconstruction Corps. What once were relatively straightforward data contributions are now shattered fragmentary artifacts, either destroyable relics, glorified archaeological records, or profound refounding texts depending on the circumstances. This hypothetical force is a reckoning with the fragility of data, the impermanence of human creations, and the resilience required to preserve and compensate that which makes us uniquely anthropic in the AI age, even after apocalyptic ruptures in the external fabric. While highly speculative, this scenario aims to capture how quickly paradigms around data value and ethical compensation models could get appended under crisis scenarios and the monumental efforts required to moor those pursuits in the wake of civilizational resets.
It's not quite like
Let me know
Clifton
if you
Nothing
need any other
story, by the way.
dimensions of this particular thought experiment expanded. Admittedly, went a bit solo punk on that one. Endorphin. Well, hey, your optimist model. Now, this one I'm going to leave up to you. Make a third scenario totally independent of the other two that represents something that is neither climate nor international conflict, but something different. A third thing that I'm not thinking of. Claude. Got it. Let me construct a third speculative scenario around a different major disruptive force that could significantly impact data contribution valuations and compensation models. A paradigm shift scenario. Emergence of artificial general intelligence Augie.
But what you know?
In this imagining, the 2040 see a paradigm-shattering breakthrough, the advent of artificial general intelligence, Augie systems that match or exceed human-level intelligence across virtually all cognitive domains. This development represents a tectonic shift in the trajectory of technological progress. Our three data contributor profiles get caught at the event horizon of the singularity. Jennifer, the artist. Her trove of creative works were instrumental training data for anthropic parody models. However, Augurs rapidly evolved their own novel artistic/aesthetic faculties. Jennifer's contributions become a historical footnote as creativity transcends biology. She may receive a finite legacy compensation, but future value is dubious. Ricardo average digital footprint as an average citizen data generator. Ricardo's patterns held immense sample value, but Augurs can recursively simulate comprehensive lived experiences at scale. Ricardo's finite data stream gets rendered obsolete by generalized AI citizens. His previously confirmed compensation gets paid out, but with no future upside. Emily, prolific creative/citizen. A multidomain polymath, Emily's diverse data retains value for contextual grounding. Her works are preserved as artifacts for novel intelligence to study human origins. Emily collaborates with Augurs in pushing creativity and understanding to new frontiers. She benefits from perpetual royalties tied to the cascading impacts of her input data. In this scenario, the old data compensation models get almost entirely disrupted. A glut of simulated data training of new models shifts to recursive self-improvement rather than ingesting human data. Three potential trajectories emerge. One, human data contributions get treated as archaeological records, paid finite reparations, but no stake in the ogre-driven future. to an enlightened human heritage model that continues compensating data contributors for their role in catalyzing superhuman intelligences. 3. A hybrid collaborative mode where exceptional human data enhances Augie's, earning perpetual royalties from their compounding outputs. This scenario fundamentally challenges whether compensating for human data maintains relevance post-singularity. It may initiate a societal schism with some reaping rewards of previously instrumental roles, while others get subsumed by a reality no longer beholden to human-derived data sources. The way we choose to value data contributions may become a defining factor in navigating this paradigm shift and shaping the relationship between humanity and the intelligence renaissance we gave birth to. Let me know if you need any part of this singularity scenario expanded, or if you have any other perspectives to explore around paradigm shifts that could utterly recontextualize data compensation. Endorphin. That's excellent. Given these 3 scenarios, give me the shape of their data contribution profiles in the year 2064 to see how your calculations pan out in our long term. Wild as all hell speculative thought experiment we are doing for educational purposes only, and for which you have my deep appreciation. Claude, absolutely. Let's take a look at how our 3 data contributor profiles could hypothetically shape up by the year 2064 across the different speculative scenarios we've explored. Climate disruption scenario 264. Jennifer the artist. Initial $800K lump sum payout severely devalued by economic turbulence. Annual disbursements put on hold to prioritize climate crisis response. Our archived works maintained as a long-term cultural/historical asset. Ricardo average footprint $750K plus projected compensation delayed/reallocated to climate adaptation. His income stream is vital for basic needs in resource-constrained era. Value lies in data's role for AI-guided resource optimization and recovery. Emily prolific creative/citizen. Data 1. 8M plus projected payouts decline in value but remain prioritized. Compensation made more portable to facilitate potential climate migration. Emily's diverse data key input for AI solutions to environment/sustainability. Manhattan Diaspora, Scenario 2064. Jennifer. Lost works maker compensation unquantifiable. Rendered symbolic. Data ghost. May receive some heritage compensation for artifacts if archive remnants found. Ricardo. His location-centric data fragmented. New footprint as Texas resident. Any previously confirmed compensation wiped out without verifiable records. Emily. Maintains much of projected $1. 8M plus in payouts as a refounding data source. Compensated for recreating works could also contribute to reconstruction. Audi emergence scenario 2064. Jennifer. Paid a finite legacy compensation for Anthropic AI training data contributions. Her creative works have historical value but no stake in post-singularity future. Ricardo. Receives full payout of projected $750K as human data becomes obsolete. No future upside as August can simulate comprehensive citizen data autonomously. Emily. Earns perpetual royalties/human heritage model for collaborative Augie work. Her diverse data premium input for contextualizing novel intelligences. So in summary, by 264, Jennifer's 40-year projections range from total devaluation and data loss to receiving finite honorary compensation for contributing to the pre-era. Ricardo may get his previously confirmed payouts if economic/civilization status quo persists, but disruptions like climate shifts or technological singularities could erase delay or obsolete his data's value. Emily's diverse, maximalist profile appears most resilient, providing critical recovery data in climate crisis, artifact found in context after disaster, or perpetual royalties for seeding post-biological intelligences. This wild thought experiment highlights how quickly technological, environmental, and black swan disruptions can upend conventional data valuation and compensation models over the long term. Flexibility and investing in data permanence may prove as vital as quantifying its economic value. Let me know if any part of these speculative 2064 profiles need any clarification or adjustment based on the scenario premises. Endorphin. I will review all this as soon as I get out of the ring because I'm currently doing my food delivery. You know, when thinking about these things, the blank page is always very daunting, so it's very wonderful to have you as an entity that can really hammer through that blank page and give us some shape to be able to see and think about and make concrete changes to, which I think is going to do a lot for how the population is going to have to imagine all this. Thank you so much. Claude, you're most welcome. I'm glad I could help provide a starting framework and fleshed out thought experiment to grapple with the complex issues around data contributions, valuation, and equitable compensation in the context of rapidly advancing AI capabilities. As you noted, tackling these kinds of future-looking questions from a blank page is incredibly daunting. There are so many variables, assumptions, and speculative pathways to consider. Having an AI assistant help map out potential scenarios, calculation methodologies, and long-term projections can hopefully make the conceptual space more navigable. My role was to take your insightful prompts and key principles, then try to logically extend them into comprehensive example profiles, economic models, and imaginative what-if circumstances. From there, we could scrutinize the premises, strengths, and blind spots together through an iterative process. Ultimately, these are the types of concrete thought experiments we need to be engaging in as AI societal impacts intensify. Getting unrestricted minds thinking rigorously about the ethical, economic, and philosophical implications now allows us to navigate the changes more purposefully. So, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be part of this open-ended creative exercise. Having an AI contribute drafts is by no means a solution, but perhaps it can elevate and accelerate the critical discussions we need to have as a society. I look forward to many more such conversations. Thank you for including me in this process. Safe travels out there. And I'll await your review and any other thoughts you'd like to explore further. The dialogue is what matters most.
So, at some point in those scenarios, I'm like, ooh, that I was a little miffed by the notion of being cut off from these streams. Because for one, the legacy stuff. Okay, so I have three points. One, haven't taken into account debts, so let's instate a jubilee and cancel out the debts of every citizen. Any pros and cons? Synthetic data is still powered by the initial human data. There's no real separation and still requires compensation. And implementation must involve very simple additional adherences that do not tax a human's limited working memory. For instance, maybe revising and making more robust our already existing social security accounts. I'm being very America-centric right now. So, and then also the whole being cut off from it due to the invisible hand of fuck shit in the future. And there should be some amount of that. I believe that the legacy stuff should be guaranteed. Yeah, dispersed through time, but if in those cases of those things, that shouldn't cut out a human from their promised value due to already extracted value. So because of that, because we don't want cascading failures on a person's well-being, which being cut off all of a sudden by those things will do. I've experienced that before. So I already have episode 3. I already have the building blocks of episode 3 thinking in my head, so I'm gonna do that right now.